the small things. Truth care, truth brings. I'll take one leg, you're right, last stray. Say it ain't so, I will not go. Turn the lights off, carry me home. Today we're talking about Blink 182. Welcome to Pop Culture Catechism, conversations about music, movies, and the longings of the human heart. Let's get started. Will I ever grow up? Does anybody like me? Am I even good at anything? Am I destined to die alone? Forgive me if I sound a little bit emo, but today we are talking about emo pop punk royalty. One of the bands that started it all was super influential through the 2010s and early 2000s and is having a resurgence because of the resurgence of pop punk music. Today we're talking about Blink 182, who has sold a bazillion records, and I'm very happy today to be joined by my friend Anthony D'Ambrosio, who is also the founder of Catholic Creatives and doing a lot of other cool stuff as well. My name is Mike Tenney. I'm a Catholic speaker and worship leader from Washington, D.C. I spent over a decade doing Catholic high school education and then at night trying to grind, make it as a rock star and win Grammys and all that sorts of things. And now I speak and lead worship for thousands of people each year through this podcast, but also through live events. And I love talking with people about pop music and movies and just the media we consume, but how there's often a deeper lesson in it. So I call this Pop Culture Catechism. It's the gospel according to pop music and movies. And so by the end of the episode today, my hope for you, listener, is that not only will you have a deeper appreciation for Blink 182 and emo music, but also you'll have some practical tips for how to experience God's love in your life a little bit better and how to apply that to the people you meet every day. So let's go ahead and get into it. Before we do that, I just want to say a special quick thank you to our patrons who make the show possible through their monthly patronage at popculturecatechism.com and the Awaken Catholic app. Thank you guys so much. Anthony D'Ambrosio, how are you, man?
Yo, what's up, man? I'm here.
Good.
I'm pumped to be here.
I am pumped to be here too. So tell the beautiful people about your beautiful self.
Well, I've been working for 34 years on cultivating this beauty. I've got a mustache that's been, it's probably a month long. I am a entrepreneur, filmmaker, designer, and founder of Catholic Creatives, founder of a creative agency called Sherwood Fellows. And right now I work for a company called Catholic Ventures, building their e-commerce platform, Catholic.store. You can think of it a little bit like a Catholic Huckberry or lifestyle goods for Catholic homes. So and outside of that, my interests have spanned from being a rock star as well. I was in a band in high school and was dreaming to go to Warped Tour, went to seminary instead, and then spent about 6 years doing youth ministry, speaking, all of that stuff on the speaker circuit before making the pivot into doing marketing, creative work, and consulting with churches. So yeah, really happy to be here and pumped to talk about one of my favorite things, which is pop punk music and Blink 182.
Yeah. And Anthony, I knew about you before I got to know you a little bit through Catholic Creatives. So Catholic Creatives is you and just like some of your friends and your brothers, I think, started this place online. Well, it started in person with just some of you in Dallas, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of the details, but a place where creative people in the church can develop this kind of new renaissance of art in the church. Because the cliche is kind of like, oh, Christian art, it's kind of like not as good as other stuff. But that's kind of a modern thing. Like through much of Christian history, like Christians were at the cutting edge of art. And so this idea of a new renaissance and that we're trying to collaborate, not compete with each other. And so you guys launched this initiative and it just spoke so much to my heart. So I got involved in the online community. Now I'm an admin with the Facebook group, and I've gotten to know a lot of people through the community. And my connections here at Awaken Catholic, the way I got doing this show was through Catholic Creatives. Like some of my closest friends now are people I've met through Catholic Creatives. So I am hugely indebted to you for the work that you've done to had like great fruit in my life. And even when you were running the Catholic Creatives podcast, just kind of the way that you were as a host and some of the vulnerability you brought to some of the conversations have been a model for me and how I run my show. And also you just been like, you've been real supportive of me and a cheerleader of me. Like even before we got to know each other, you helped me just get hooked up with guests and all sorts of stuff. So I'm really grateful to you just for being who you are and the way you helped me. So thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, I'm super pumped. I think that it's been an amazing journey. And I don't know why God sort of put me as the person to plant that flag on the ground to say, here's where we're all meeting, everybody that's Catholic and creative. But somehow that became my role in a way in the church for the last like 6 to 10 years. So yeah. I would say the same thing, like I've gotten to be the sort of person that has made thousands of friends online through this crazy thing called the internet. Yeah, it's amazing. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Blink-182 has sold over 50 million records worldwide. They're kind of this seminal pop punk band. I think maybe Green Day was a little bit before them, and people credit Weezer with being kind of the beginning of the emo moment, but they were kind of this crystallization of a little bit Weezer, a little bit Green Day, a little bit of like the old school punk from the 80s. And it kind of launched everything we got afterwards with Fall Out Boy and Paramore and Panic at the Disco and All American Rejects through the aughts and the 2010s. And right now in music, we're having this moment of revitalization and rebirth of pop punk. Machine Gun Kelly's getting into that style more. Willow Smith is doing that style more. Travis Barker, the drummer from Blink-182, is like, he's a major producer and he's playing on everybody's records again. He did a concert with Post Malone. So it's like Blink-182 is relevant again because of just their influence. And so it's cool to be talking about them in 2022. So what do you love about them?
Well, the first time that I heard a Blink-182 song, I think everybody has moments, particularly when they're young, where they discover certain music that says something to their souls or about their souls that perhaps they never would have been able to express. And yeah, I think that I found in them an honesty and a radical vulnerability, as well as like a hope, that all kind of came together in the way that they played their music. Like, their music is so fun, it's a very funny and rebellious and kind of cheeky, while at the same time it's speaking to certain parts of family life and to growing up that are really hard things. Like, I listen to a lot of music, a lot of music now that it feels so abstract and inaccessible. Like, this is me sort of bagging perhaps on pop music now, which is perhaps it's a pretty easy thing to straw man to punch at. But I think that when I listen to a lot of music that is being written now, you can't really understand the lyrics, or they are about things that are so obvious and easy to talk about and normal to talk about that there's nothing really that special about what is being spoken. But you think about, like, the breadth of topics that Blink-182 would write about, and it basically just captures adolescence in a box. Like, it's like every bit of the experience of going through puberty is like there, all of the positive experiences of just like, joy and passion and fun, while at the same time, like, all of the angst of connecting with the brokenness of the world and trying to process that both in the family and in school and, in the public sphere. So all of that to me made me fall in love with them.
All right. Well, that's a good intro, because that's a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about later. The thing that so there's two things I really appreciate about them. All the things you said, but I appreciate the simplicity of the music, but it's still like very artfully arranged. So they have like simple little guitar parts. It's mostly like power chords, which are very simple chords to play if you don't know anything about guitar. It's like 2 fingers or 3 fingers in the same shape that just kind of moves around. And then simple little riffs like I took her out, it was a Friday night. It's very, very simple. And then but then the rhythms, and I think this is where Travis Barker has like been so influential, is the switching up of different time signatures and the rhythmic of their songs. There's a famous professor at Catholic University who just passed away named Dr. Leo Nestor, and he ran the music there for a long time. And one of the things he would always say to the choir is the first fundamental element of music is rhythm. More than anything else, you need good rhythm. And if you've been in bands, and in my opinion, for having been in bands, I would take a good drummer over a good singer. A good drummer is like the most important thing, and Travis Barker is just like amazing. So for example, and it'll happen once again. You'll turn to a friend. Someone understands, sees through the master plan. But so the tempo stays the same. It's all 1, 2, 3, 4, but you're 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that switch up from what they call cut time to regular time to double time they're doing that all over the place, and that's had a huge influence on music ever since, even in hip hop, which he's done a lot of. So I rhythmically, especially, I really like what they're doing. So
yeah. It's a you can't listen to songs now that are on the radio and then go back and listen to like that era of drum playing and feel any sort of you're like immediately blown away. At least for me, like when I listened to the new Blink-182 CD, I was like, I've been missing drums because like, you know, it's very easy to and even just playing a straight, you know, 4 on the floor, just like a straightforward beat to keep the song going, it's hard. It still takes masterful drumming to be able to like keep time, but just the amount of creativity and flair and like dynamism that was being brought to music during pop punk days when it was just 4 people or 3 people in a band. You know, like you have that sort of simplicity where you pare everything down to just that, and you don't have backing tracks, you don't have like all the electronic stuff. You have to somehow create something really interesting and different and unique with the like that one instrument. And for sure, the advent of pop punk brought drumming, really, really creative drumming to mainstream music.
I think so too. The one thing I would say I don't always like about them is they kind of like
the whiny voice.
The whiny voice, like, oh, I cry all the time in the night. Good boy. It's just the stereotypical emo voice. I didn't know it was like that, but yeah. All right. Anything artistically before we move on to spiritual themes?
Oh no, dude, I'm all about the spiritual themes. Let's jump into the Jesus talk.
Very cool. Very cool. So you started off by talking about just being a young man, going through puberty, having all this like joy and enthusiasm for life, but also all this angst and like insecurity. There's so many songs we could choose. There's I think the one that stands out to me first and foremost is What's My Age Again? Nobody likes you when you're 23. And it's a little cheeky, a little immature. So like, what to you as a young man, what hit you about Blink-182? What resonated with you?
Well, the whole thing about like that time, right? This is what, 2000 and maybe 1 or 2, somewhere in there when I first discovered them. And their music videos were always making fun of things that were like the things that everybody else was doing, and somehow being really just hilarious. And I think that when I don't know, just like bands that are willing to be really funny with the way that they approach things, they're like telling a story in a way. Like, I mean, the What's My Age Again one, like the music video for that is them running around naked, right? Like it's just like streaking, which of course is like classic young adult, young man, like kid thing to do. But one of the other ones, I can't remember which one, was the Small Things or something like that,
things,
where
yeah.
they're going around giving money to people, or Josie or Dan. I can't remember which movie it was, but they basically just have a bunch of money and they're going around town, like giving people money to do ridiculous things. And yeah, like the just the sense of joy and exuberance and play I loved. And that was not just in the way that they looked, but it was in the way that they, you know, showed up to their concerts. They were famous for having hilarious banter. It was almost like a stand-up comedy routine slash concert. And yeah, they were willing to say the things that nobody else was willing to say. But it wasn't dark yet. You know, I think that as you trace music from like the pop punk thing all the way through emo, from like 2001 all the way through like 2010, the sense of darkness in the music like gets more and more and more oppressive and like painful. Whereas Blink-182, they were able to like strike this balance between that play, which was so central, and this sense of ability to say the things that no one else could say or talk about. Like for instance, writing a song about suicide, like that's next to the song about, you know, all the small things, or like First Date, right? It's like same CD, here's a song about suicide. And you know, a really difficult song about divorce and how that like stay together for the kids, like how divorce is affecting families. So like they're saying things that come directly from personal experience, from the heart, about just like the pain of growing up. And also they're willing to say like, this is what it feels like to be on a first date. And, you know, I'm jealous of everybody in the room, you know, like it's just really endearing. So
I like how there's that juxtaposition of like the good and bad of being young. Like, you know, I worked in Catholic high school for 14 years. And so people would always say, anyway, I've had some adult perspective on high school and growing up and adolescence, and I've had quite a bit of time to think about it and see a lot of people make that journey. And people sometimes ask me, like, do you wish you could go back? And there's a certain, like, going back to college or that age when you were younger, or going back to high school, like there's a certain amount of like, yeah, I didn't have any free, you know, I didn't have any obligations as much. But there's another part of me that like definitely doesn't want to go back, because I was an idiot and I was insecure and I didn't know who I was. I didn't know if anybody liked me when I was 17 or 20, 30 or whatever. And I was super awkward on dates. I didn't know if girls liked me. And it was like, so there's this part of growing up that it does have this joy to it, but also this, like, it's hard. Growing up is hard. And I think we're all still growing up, but I wonder if you and I can talk about what does it take to grow up, especially as a young man? Because I see, especially in a lot of the young men that I work with, they don't know what it means to like grow up. They don't know what it means to move from boyhood to manhood. And maybe girls struggle with that too, but I just know that that's something I see as a man and looking at myself when I was young and looking at boys today. And I wonder, like, I don't know, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, well, the question I guess I'm going to talk about it in terms of my relationship with Blink-182.
Okay.
And we'll just kind of like run along on that. I'm just going to riff on that for
a
little bit, because it's verbal processing. I haven't really tried to like put those two things together, but
sure.
I think that part of what Blink-182 was doing was like, as jesters in a way, they were pointing out the problems with society. And that was like, I mean, anytime that even if you read Shakespeare, like the jester is always a character in his plays. Yeah. And that the key of that character is they're funny in a way that makes them feel almost like separate from society and from everything else going on in the play. And that funniness allows them to say things that no one else in the play can say to the king or to people who have power. And I think that like what they're their role was and why it was so profound to me was that I felt like there was so much that you couldn't say as a kid. Like you weren't allowed to point at these things that didn't make sense in society, that seemed painful and broken and selfish about how grown-ups or the, previous generation had set things up. And so you had to just be quiet and kind of be like a victim in a way of that and conform. And they were sort of championing this ability to speak out, but like without doing so from just this like angry place. And I think, particularly that song, like Anthem Part 2, I loved it so much. It's this deep guttural cry for this generation. Like basically they're saying this generation is messed up in a way that no one else, like people perhaps are saying, like adults are saying this generation is messed up, but the adults are not acknowledging the things that they have done to set us up to be messed up, So it's like, the song goes, everything has fallen to pieces. Earth is dying. Help me, Jesus. We need guidance. We've been misled. Young and hostile, but not stupid. And
Woo! Like, thank you. That's awesome. You got a good voice, man. I don't know if I've ever heard you sing.
Well, yeah, I was in a Blink-182 cover band for
that's great.
Whatever. So no, I think that like what they were saying was, hey, we're acting out, but it's because like we don't have guidance. And that speaks so deeply to my soul. Like I had probably zero conversations about puberty, sexuality, personal growth, like outside of, hey, you shouldn't do this. Like I had zero real guidance when I was going through that part of my life. And I felt so isolated and alone and ashamed and angry and like insecure. And I don't think that's how you're supposed to go through puberty. Like I think that's actually incredibly toxic to be sort of left to your own devices with the shark, thrown to the sharks, I guess, if you will, like the suburban world of public high school, where it really is dog eat dog. I think that in order for me to become a man, I needed other men who had walked that journey, who could say, this is what I felt and what I did and what I didn't do. And it's okay that you feel those things and you're doing these things, or like, don't do these things, but like, it's normal, just like the discovery of sexuality for me was so shameful and isolated and like could never, ever talk about it to adults, to parents, whatever. The seeing how distant parents were from their kids in suburbia, like the rat race for getting more big things, but like divorce being just a looming thing that's on the horizon for every family of every kid that I knew. Like, anyway, all that stuff was pretty messed up. And at the same time, all these like people are like, oh man, like you guys suck. Like this generation is going to hell in a handbasket. And it's like, don't pass the buck. Like your job is to be here with us and to show us how to do this. And you've abdicated. So you can't like, anyway. So
it's an okay boomer moment.
Okay boomer. Anyway, so I think that that, and then also
hold on just a second. First of all, thank you for saying that, because what you just shared, like certainly a lot of what you said resonates with me. And I'm sure it resonates with a lot of people, and having taught sexuality to many young people through the years, like doing units on it in class and giving talks on it. One of the questions I often ask is, whose parents have talked to them about sex? And it's always a minority. Always a minority. A lot of kids, the way they find out about sex is through pornography, from their friends, just because the parents just are so awkward and don't want to talk about it. And I think you are hitting on something that is so important. You said, I didn't know how to become a man until I met some men that were willing to walk with me and say, I felt those things too. It's okay to feel those things. And, you know, maybe you've made some mistakes, but it's okay. And one of the questions I've kind of had in my notes when I was thinking about this topic is like, should a Christian man be emo? You know? And I think we get this kind of fake facade of Christian manliness sometime, that it's like stoicism, you know, like you just don't have many emotions and you just do hard stuff and you're responsible and self-disciplined, and like doing hard things and having perseverance and being courageous and having self-discipline is like great. But so what happens to a man when he doesn't learn about his interior life and his emotions and how to express them is he just gets angry. He gets angry and he gets sad, because those are like the only emotions that men are like quote unquote allowed to have in our society. So I think this is one of the reasons I love Tolkien. I talk about Tolkien all the time on this show, but like the men in Tolkien, they're like courageous and self-disciplined and super skilled, but they're also like constantly hugging and kissing each other, appreciating beauty, telling each other how much they love each other. Like they have this rich emotional life, and it's such a robust vision of male friendship and of what it means to be a full man. And I wouldn't say Blink-182 capture it quite as well as Tolkien does, but they're on to something. Like in the irreverence, in the running around in their underwear, like there's, and then in the songs where they're talking about divorce and suicide, like they're capturing something, a lacuna, if you will. There's your SAT word for the day. There's something that is missing in our society, and even in Catholic Christian societies, development of men is understanding our own emotions and what to do with those.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, I think that it is in looking at Blink-182, like why does everything get darker and darker and darker after them? Like, I think that what they're doing is they're pointing out something that's wrong, but and they're bringing an important part of that. Like, pointing out the thing that's wrong is like a big, very important part of the healing process. Mm-hmm. But they still didn't have that. There wasn't that sense of like, okay, there's these guys over them who are kind of showing them how to like grow up, you know, like you certainly don't get the sense in listening to them or watching their music videos that they are growing up, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that it's like, whenever the chain between man and son is broken, it's one thing to be able to say, hey, this is broken. It's another thing to be able to fix it. Like, and for me, the way that I had to sort of go about fixing that was to start finding other men who could help me, rather than like being the one that could criticize society and being like, you know, this is all messed up, I'm going to like just rebel against it. I had to be able to like find inside of me what was messed up for me, become accountable to that, and like accept a sort of, you know, responsibility for that growth. And so vulnerability was a really important part of that, but also just like being willing to get into those intimate relationships with men where we're like sharpening each other and becoming accountable and things like that. So
something that I have a couple friends who are psychologists, which comes in handy. But one of my buddies was explaining to me, he says there are certain like tasks that are supposed to happen for a healthy person in adolescence. He says the 3 tasks of adolescence, I wrote them down, are figuring out your identity, your community, and your mission. Your identity, your community, and your mission. And looking back, I realized like, oh, like I found those through church. Like I found this through my youth group. Like it was the first place I felt like I had been accepted by a community. It was the first place I learned like to pray, and I like felt like God was real. And that's how I like learned my identity and who I was. And it's where I gained a real sense of mission for like, and also for my brothers. I have 2 awesome older brothers who are also like, and a great dad. But I think as the youngest, I also looked up to my older brothers a lot. They just have like such a heart for the poor. And they're just like, they're super into just justice and poverty work, and just super compassionate, prayerful men. And so learning I feel like I learned all those in various ways through my spiritual formation. And when you don't get those and you don't know who you are and you don't know where you belong and you don't know what your mission is or your goal is in life, of course you're going to feel lost. Of course you're going to feel like, well, I guess this is growing up, you know, like that's how you're going to feel. And there's going to be pain. And it's going to lead to insecurity and self-loathing. Are we ready to go to Adam's song? Is that a good segue?
Sure.
Okay. So. I never thought I'd die alone. Another 6 months I'll be unknown. Give all my things to all my friends. You never set never set foot in my room again. This song wrecks me.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
I can't listen to it without crying.
I know. Yeah. It's so sad. And the guys that wrote it, Mark and Tom, like they said, it was written about a friend who had committed suicide, and it was supposed to show like they wrote it to show like this is what happens, and like it was written as like an anti-suicide song, but I think some people like kind of misunderstood it as like a pro-suicide song almost. So very, very famously, after the shooting at Columbine High School, I think in 1999, one of the like star basketball players on the Columbine team committed suicide, and he left this song like on repeat. And to like in his room after he committed suicide. And so this song has been pretty controversial through the years. And Mark and Tom were just like, they were heartbroken by this. It was like, this was the opposite of what we were trying to do. Like we were trying to reach kids who felt in that place to see and tell them like, this is not the way out. This is not what you want to do. Look at all the pain that comes from this. But yeah, it's hard to listen to this song for real.
Yeah. I mean, did you have any friends that committed suicide like when you were younger? Or
I had a friend whose little brother did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely like the sense of isolation and shame that's in the voice in that song. It's like they're capturing what a young person is feeling like when they're considering suicide. Mm-hmm. And it's this cry to like, to be known, and this despair of being known and having a place, right? Like another 6 months and I'll be unknown. Like you guys will all hurt, but that'll be gone in 6 months and then nobody will remember me. Like I'm that irrelevant to the world. And I think that there's so many people that feel that way. Yeah. And what Blink-182 is doing is like, we're willing to put that to music so that the world knows what it's like an empathetic exercise. And yeah, like I'm sure people who have committed suicide have put that out there to say, this is what I feel like right now. You know, I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I wouldn't listen to this song on repeat myself, but like certainly would use it to articulate to someone else, this is how I feel right now. You know, like no one else knows how I feel, but this song nailed it. And, you know, that's definitely painful, but I think it's an important exercise to listen to it, because it's like, if you haven't ever felt this, you need to know what people are going through out there.
Yeah. And I know I can definitely relate to that feeling of just like being alone, of not knowing if things will get better, not really expecting that things will get better. And I've never, you know, I would never say I've been like clinically depressed or anything like that, but I think it's a very common experience that many of us go through, and we can kind of almost imagine a bit of how it feels. But then for those who have struggled with something deeper, a more clinical depression, a longer depression, and then thinking about, well, what if I took my life? What if there's a knife over there? What if I, what if, and just, it's so hard to go on. I think a song like this can make people feel seen and heard. But ultimately, it can also leave them. That's the danger. And
that's one of the things that I think, like, I don't necessarily criticize it, but I think that, there's like a sense of the blind leading the blind when you listen to music from this generation. Like they are able to say, here's a problem, but they aren't able to offer a solution outside of saying, here's the problem.
Yeah.
You know, like that's the first step. But without hope, you know, without Jesus, like you can only joke about it for so long until it's just like, no, this just sucks. Like there's no joking anymore. And you can just see that developing in the music, right? Like nobody else is as funny and fun as Blink-182 after them that is being influenced by them. And yeah, I go back and I listen to any music from that time and I immediately have to like, it's hard for me. I have to turn it off because it was such a dark period of time for me that I like feel like I was redeemed by finding God. Yeah, because talking about the problem just isn't the solution.
Well, this doesn't relate directly to Blink-182, but you know, you grew up in a Catholic house, yeah?
Yeah, I did.
When do you feel like it became like real for you?
Yeah, it's a good question because it very much ties to my musical journey. Like I was, I think that Catholicism became real in adoration on a Life Teen retreat. When I was able to go to confession and like pray with other people who were being vulnerable. Like one of the things that I loved about Blink-182 or whatever, the pop punk movement was that like, it's all these people are willing to sort of share their pain with each other in a way. And you go to like a mosh pit or whatever. And it's almost like this cathartic, like worshiping sort of ritual that's religious in a way. And, but it doesn't have redemption. Like at the end of the day, the redemption is like being able to share it and be together. And there is something nice and beautiful about that. But the contrast to that of worship is there actually is a God who can save us and who loves us and give us this identity of the thing that we're missing. And so it was like, this was a more mature version of the thing that I was so into and excited about when I went to my first like pop punk show. So that was like my junior, senior year when I started to kind of experience those things.
I love the key word that stood out to me when you were talking was vulnerability. And I feel like so often, especially as young men, I feel like we often are given that idea of you can't be vulnerable. You have to be strong. And the fact that we have a God that is vulnerable with us and created a church where we boast of our weakness, you know, as St. Paul says, and we're meant to have not just concern for the poor, but a preferential option for the poor and vulnerable and marginalized. We're supposed to go out of our way for those who are weakest, right? And so and when we find ourselves weak, it's in our weak that we find our strength, right? And so finding a community like you did and finding a relationship with God like you did, and that was very much my journey too. I feel like it shows that we can take the mask down. We can be vulnerable and be truly seen for who we are. And there's going to be a God that loves us, and you and I have had some good experiences, but I know I've had some bad experiences too. But when church is doing church well, the church is living out and manifesting that love in acceptance. I know that doesn't always happen, and I've had some bad experiences in church too. And I know some people have had some awful experiences in church where the people in church are doing the opposite of that. But I feel like that's what I hear, and that's what's resonating with me is we found a community that is manifesting that love of God, that vulnerable love that says it's okay. You can let down your mask and you can be vulnerable with me. Yeah. So
like all of these people kneeling down around this is pretty classic Life Teen, but you have like a big pyramid of candles and then on top of it is the monstrance, the burning bush thing. Yeah. And it's dark and like there's beautiful worship music that is as well done as like a Blink-182 concert. But instead of everybody facing the band and in some way just like making the band the God or the lyrics, there is an actual God there that everyone is sort of weeping as they are encountering. And afterwards, there's a sense that's not just catharsis, like we got all that out of our system. It's like we've been filled up. You know, that part of us that was like giving and making ourselves empty of our pain was then met by something holy and beautiful and good that then came in and changed us.
Yes.
And afterwards, you know, you can see the dynamic. I mean, this is one of the things I loved about doing youth ministry, was like the difference in the way that people, the whole, like, no, it doesn't matter how big it was, 200 people, everyone after adoration is like hugging and loving each other and like laughing, and the lightness that's present there is just like unbelievable.
It's the kingdom of God. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the kingdom of God. Yeah.
Taste of heaven that's come down and met earth. And of course, like, of course we just like completely ruin it for ourselves as soon as we go home. But like, it does give us this sense that there is a way out of our, you know, pain, our like problems, our dynamic. There is this hope. There's this extra power that's above the world that can bring healing and meet us. And so I think that, like, I'm so grateful because when I look at my friends who made emo and pop punk music, that was their God. And, you know, or was their church. Like, the darkness of their lives right now makes me so sad. Yeah. You know, they didn't move on past the criticism of society. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And those mountaintop moments that you're talking about are so important. And I feel like it's easy to, in retrospect, like, as you were saying, like, it's important to hold on to those moments and remember them in the dark times. But I feel like the temptation a lot of times is, you were talking about people that, like, you feel bad for the darkness in their life. Like, a lot of times what I feel bad for is my friends that I had those same mountaintop experiences with. And now it's like, oh, that was just like kid stuff, or oh, that was spoilers for the end of the Chronicles of Narnia if you never read book number 7. But like, at the end of the Chronicles of Narnia, Susan, the oldest sister, like, she doesn't go back to Narnia with them. She's like, oh, weren't those clever stories that we believed when we were young? It's like, you're supposed to go into the wardrobe and have this experience which changes you, so then when you're out of the wardrobe, you can live this transformed life. But then, like, the real world is with Aslan. Like, that is Aslan's country is the real world. And those mountaintop moments, that's where we get that glimpse of heaven. And it's so easy to then come back out of the wardrobe, go back to regular life and think, oh, well, that was a nice high, but this is all that there is. And I think this is something that you've said a couple times now, is Blink-182 is really good at showing us the problem and being vulnerable enough to point out the problem, but they didn't take us the next step. And both you and I were able to find, through a healthy church community and through a relationship with God, that there is an answer. There is an answer to that vulnerability. The song "Damn It" is a perfect example of this vulnerability, and it's like super aggressive pop punk. It's like, it's all right to tell me what you think about me. But if you listen to the first verse, it is so beautiful and vulnerable. And just play it a little bit different and it totally hits different. So, it's all right to tell me what you think about me. I won't try to argue or hold it against you. I know that you're leaving. You must have your reasons. The season is calling. Your pictures are falling down, and it happens once again. So the reason I play it that way is because I think I often sold Blink-182 short as just kind of being like the irreverent stuff that you talked about, you know, and kind of making fun of everything. But what vulnerability and freedom does it take to say to someone that you care about, you know, it's all right to tell me what you think about me. I won't try to argue. I won't get defensive, and I won't hold it against you. Like, there is, if you have that sort of vulnerability in a relationship, and like, I feel like I cry in every episode, but I'm like tearing up a little bit because I'm thinking about like my wife, who, like, she and I have that sort of relationship where it's like, it's all right to tell me what you think about me. I won't try to argue. I won't hold it against you. Like, it is okay. And that comes with like such, I mean, it's prodigal son type love, and it comes with such freedom. It's just like, whoo, gets me right in the feels. Emo kids till the last.
Yeah, I think well, one of the things that is like speaking the truth opens up a path for honesty and for healing and for relationship. So like, if you look at all of the irreverence and all of that stuff, like what it actually is coming from is like this desire for real relationship and real love. And it's a desire for real mentorship, you know, like all of the criticism of boomers or whatever in society, like all of that it's actually not this just straight anger. It's like this desire for real fatherhood and real mentorship. And so anyway, like I think that what you're pointing out is like amazing. It's there's so much courage that it takes to like reach out and say, I want real truth. And you can tell me what you think about me, you know, like you can say what is on your heart. I'm going to say what's on my heart. And hopefully we can actually find our way into real love that way.
Yes. This is a quote I've shared on the show before, but it comes from John Paul II, who's right behind me. He's in one of these pictures behind me, but it says that man cannot live without love. He remains a being that is incomprehensible for himself. His life is senseless if love is not revealed to him, if he does not encounter love, if he does not experience it and make it his own, if he does not participate intimately in it. And I feel like that encapsulates so much of what we've talked about here with being a young man and feeling lost and feeling like I don't know what to do with these problems is we need to participate in love. We need to be taught love. We need to know how to love. And that's where we find our identity and our mission and our community is in real love. So, that quote just, I feel like everything we've been talking about can be tied back into that.
Yeah. That's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
I think we're bringing this in for a landing here. Are there other Blink songs that we just have to talk about before we go?
I mean, that's a good question. First Date. I don't know.
Oh, I love that song. That's such a fun song. It's just like so cutesy. And he's like, what I love about it is, first of all, like rhythm wise, that little bridge with the like that's Travis Barker at his best. But also he's like, talking about how nervous he is and like how he's freaking out, but then he's like, let's make this last forever, you know?
It's just like, this one is one of those like, okay, it's honest. This isn't necessarily honest about something that's crazy, but it's just like accurately depicting an adolescent young man going on his first date. Like I have no idea how to do a date, but let's also get married. You know, like it's exactly the same thing. And I've gotten to be like a DJ for a lot of different weddings for friends and stuff. You know, being the youth minister that's got a sound system.
Me too.
So pretty classic. But I for some reason, like I've always, for people who I know like Blink-182, if there's like a couple that I know that like that, I always toss that on like as the last song as they're leaving, you know, like because the innocence of it, it's like, I think it actually ends up capturing what real marriage is. Like, you know, the first night of being married is probably exactly the same thing. It's like, I'm nervous, but let's make this last forever. I have no idea what I'm doing, and it's kind of embarrassing. No comment. But no, I think that it's like part of the innocence of that is like actually redeemed in marriage, you know? And like there's a place for that innocence to be in real life. So anyway, that's really beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. I was just thinking of like my first girlfriend I like ever took on a date. It was so awkward. And I think she was nervous. She like didn't eat anything of her dinner. And I was like a teenage boy. So like I ate my meal and then she didn't finish hers. She didn't like touch hers. And I was like, are you going to eat that? So dinner was me eating my entire meal and then her entire meal.
Bad form, first date. Bad form.
Bad form.
This is what we are when we're left to our own devices and we don't have mentorship to show us the way.
Exactly. Yep. All right. Well, I'm glad we talked about that song. That's good. If people aren't familiar with Blink-182 or it's been a while, what are like the 3 songs they got to listen to?
Oh my gosh.
I can go first if you want.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, so I love First Date. That's one of my favorites. I love a Rock Show. The Girl at the Rock Show is also another good one. And Damn It, the one that I sang before. I just think those are the best of Blink-182. They're super fun, and Travis Barker is amazing on them. So.
Yeah, I would say Anthem Part 2, because I actually think that the song is masterful. And I would say First Date, I would add that one for sure. And then, man, this one is really hard. I don't know if I can add it, because all the other ones are so good, but it's like it's the CD, man. It's
like the album.
The whole
do you have a what's your favorite album of theirs? I don't know them well enough to have like a favorite album.
Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. Okay. For sure. Yeah.
I forgot that's what they called their album. Oh my gosh. Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. All right. Well, and with that, so listeners, I promised you at the beginning that you would, by the end, you would have some bite-sized nuggets to apply to your life for how we can live the gospel. So let's try to pick one thing. What's one thing we can implement in our lives from this that can help us live the gospel better in our lives and know God's love?
Go on lots of first dates. No, I would say, seeking out mentorship when feeling like gypped by or like not led. I think that like taking it on yourself to go and seek out mentorship rather than going it alone is actually a really important thing. That is brilliant advice. What I was going to say was vulnerability, but I think those are kind of two sides of the same coin, because it takes vulnerability to go out and seek that mentorship. So I think, and what you said is better, because just vulnerability in general, you can be vulnerable with anyone, but mentorship, it's like, let's choose a wise person who's going to guide me to be vulnerable with first. Right. So I like your answer better. Yeah, very good. I think Blink-182 is really vulnerable, and I think it's awesome, but it also is like, it's not enough. Yes. Right. Okay. Like it's like there's a sense of going further with that vulnerability to say, like, it's not just it's not just these feelings, and it's not just other people that are causing the problem. Like, the brokenness of the world is in me, and I need to find people who can show me the way through this crazy journey that is called life. Amen. Amen. And growing up. So cool. Well, let's close this out in prayer. I can close. Would you like to close this out with a prayer about what we've talked about? Sure. Yeah. Awesome. Let's do it. Good. And listeners, wherever you are, please just take a moment and let's pray together. Yeah. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Father, you are the one who confers identity to us, and we want to come to you with honesty about the brokenness that we experience in the world, the brokenness that we see in the world. When we feel like everything is falling to pieces and earth is dying, we come to you and ask for help. We ask you, Jesus, to be our power, and we ask you to bring into our lives older and wiser people who can show us through their vulnerability to us what true life and true growth and true maturity looks like and what it takes. We ask that you would heal those broken links between generations, the places where we feel like we haven't been led and that we have been misguided. We ask that you would bring onto our hearts people who we could trust, bring into our lives people who we could trust to restore us and give us that guidance. We ask all of this in your name as we pray, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. 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 Thank you, Anthony, so much. And thank you, listeners, for going on this journey with us. If you liked this episode, if this touched you in any way, I really encourage you to share this with somebody that you think would benefit from this conversation. Maybe they're a music fan. Maybe they're just somebody you think that needs to hear this. And if you really want to support us, the best way to do that is by going to popculturecatechism.com, where you can become a patron of this show. There are 6 giving levels that you can choose that fit your budget or your tithe, and you get the exclusive content that comes out with each episode.
episode. Like, for example, in a moment, right after this, we're going to record some exclusive content for patrons about some other emo pop punk music that we really love and we think is great. So we're going to do that in just a moment. But also all the talks that I give in my speaking ministry, I record them and they go in there as well, and lots of other cool things as well. And patrons have access to all that as part of the Awaken app. The Awaken app is a free app with a great Christian Catholic community. It's got a Christian music library and prayer library. And if you are a patron of one of the shows on Awaken Catholic, you also get access to a lot of premium content, such as all the talks and exclusive content for the shows that I mentioned already. So thank you for your support. We love you, and we'll see you next time. A special thank you and shout out to all of our patrons who make this show possible, but especially Carl and Melissa Gore, Lisa and Bob Tenney, Stephen Maggie Hubbard, Rob Smith, and Tom and Emily Camberiati. Thank you so much.